Thanks. Now 1 minute is good. All right. Yeah, so last talk of the day. Hello, everyone. I'm Dag Evensberget. I'm from Norway, but I live in Australia, where I'm a PhD student at the University of Southern Queensland. And Stephen Marston, who is a BCool member, is my supervisor. Let's see if I can change the slide. Yeah, so and my talk is about probing the effect of magnetic geometry and field strength on stellar spin down using MHD simulations. So at USQ, we have been aiming to produce this large atlas or collection of maps, wind maps for young sunlight stars. We have been using ZDI magnetic maps of the stellar surface to drive three-dimensional numerical simulations. We are using an alpha wave heated corona. Software is like Batsaras and awesome. And from this, we can produce stellar wind maps of the corona and also the astrosphere. And from them, we can find, or we can calculate the stellar rate of spin down or the angular momentum loss from the wind. In my work, I've been using magnetograms from 30 young sunlight stars with known ages between 650-ish million years and 24 million years. And you can see on the left here is a nice list with all of them. So in this project, we are able to produce 2 solar wind model results. So this knobby surface here is the alpha surface. So that's kind of where the angular momentum loss happens, if you will, where the wind is no longer sort of in contact with the star. So that's the size and the shape of the alpha surface impacts the wind angular momentum loss. This translucent gray surface is the current sheet, which is where the radial magnetic field strength is 0. So we have these 2 solar models, and we also have preliminary models for all of the 30 stars shown here. So from the, or towards the right and towards the bottom, we have younger and younger stars. There's a couple of oddballs here, BD07 and low PEG. Not sure if you can see my cursor, but it's the one that are level J and M, or you can just read the names. And they have very rapid rotation, less than 1 day. So I think that's why they look so funny. And based on this portrait, we can try and find some scaling laws. So the first scaling law that I've looked at is just angular momentum loss as a function of surface magnetic field strength. So you can see here the scaling law with some example stars and some outliers. You see that the oddballs, and they are in the top right corner, but they're actually fitting well to the scaling law. By this HII739, which sort of wrap the current sheet around itself, is the one that's most of an outlier. Looking at the residuals here, so you see there's a factor of about 2 to 6 or 64. So there's a factor of 64 variation that cannot be explained by only the surface magnetic field strength in our models. Now, we can do better than that if we scale the angular momentum loss by the rate of rotation of the star. And we also use the absolute surface flux, which is the radial field strength times the stellar area. Then you see there's a much tighter correlation here. And we see on the residuals plot, we see that there's now only a variation of a factor of 4 that we cannot attribute to anything but the magnetic geometry right here. Finally, the torque-age relation. So this is maybe what we're all interested in. So the Skumanich law predicts this light blue line that I plotted here on the right, that the angular momentum loss should be proportional to the age to -3/2. And the scaling law that I get, it kind of matches up because I get -1.2 plus minus 0.5. However, the constant term, if you will, in the scaling law is different. And this is not just a problem that I have. I've indicated here that angular momentum loss from the Skumani's law, assuming the sun moment of inertia and following the Skumani's law, then in the middle, this sort of greenish color is the in situ observed J, so that's observed by satellites. And then my two values and also the red rectangular areas, that is the literature awesome. So same code as I'm using, angular momentum loss range. And I think that was 5 minutes. So thank you.
Thank you, Doug. So yeah, time for a couple of quick questions. One from Adam.
Hey, great 5-minute talk. Very good. I've got a comment and a question. So quickly, a comment. Victor Reveal did a similar kind of thing with less stars in 2016. So you could overplot the line that he gets in his paper on this plot, and that would be really nice.
That's a good idea.
And then just a quick, well, it's quite a large question, but you probably can give me a quick answer. What kind of, do you use like the same Poynting flux driving for all the models, or are you varying it given like different?
This is a great question. And there have been some papers recently where people vary this Poynting flux. And what I do, which is kind of a characteristic of the software I use, is that there's this Poynting flux to magnetic field ratio. This is fixed. And but there is indications that you need to vary this, especially if you have, I mean, the problem is that you don't see the high frequency magnetic field information, right? And the small scale magnetic field could affect the Poynting flux to field ratio. It influences that. When you don't see it, you get like a too low Poynting flux. So that's something that I'm going to look into more in the future. But here, especially in this plot here, but in all my plots, there is no scaling of the magnetic field. Other talks today have been about scaling it by a factor of 5 or 10 or whatever. But I have no scaling, and I have also assumed the same value as the sun for all these parameters of the awesome model. If I would scale these magnetic field values by a factor of 10, that would bring the sort of center line of all the models up to the Skumani's law here based on the sun moment of inertia. But that would also shift the solar values too high. So there's a question here about what you see in a solar magnetogram and the ZDI magnetogram, and how the lack of the higher or the terms, how it sort of influence, or not, I mean, you know what I mean, the high frequency terms in the ZDI magnetogram, how that affects the angular momentum loss.
Great, thank you.
Okay, well, I think that will about do it.